Thank you, Brother Stoots. Good morning. It's good to see everybody out here for Sunday school this morning. How you like all them tulips and stuff coming up in your flower bed, Gene? My goodness, March can really mess all that up, you know it? But hopefully it won't be too bad. Now today, I'm going to continue with our series of lessons on apologetics that we started last week. And in case you wasn't here, I know some of y'all weren't here, we're going to do a little quick summary of what we talked about last week just to get our mind focused in the right direction. Now, we started our discussion with the idea that most of us think that apologetics means apologizing for something that we've done wrong. But that's not what it is. We looked at the actual definition of apologetics as being reasonable arguments or writings in justification of something, typically a theory or religious doctrine. We then started to discuss apologetics, and we said, okay, if you go discuss, you have to first look at the term worldviews, which means a particular philosophy of life, or the way that we view the world. In other words, the way we make our judgments about life. We then looked at 6 different types of worldviews and discussed how some of them has got some weird religious beliefs, right, Brother Steve? We discussed theism, atheism, pantheism, panentheism, deism, and polytheism. We then spent quite a few moments talking about the Christian worldview and the things that we believe as Christians, how we know God exists, how God reveals himself to us and he seeks us out, how the Bible is God's Word, and how Jesus Christ is God's Son. And we ended our lesson with 5 key facts about Jesus. How he is God, he was human, he died on a cross, he rose from the grave, and he is our Lord. So let's pick back up this morning, and the next topic on apologetics is the evidence that God does exist. We're going to be looking at 2 different types that proves the existence of God. One is through creation, and one is through design. So we're going to start with creation first. Now, when we look at our specific beginning or our origin, we have to ask ourselves, does it really matter where we come from, Brother Gary? Does it really matter to us? Well, if we are created in the image of God, as the Bible claims, then we are here for a reason. Our human life is dedicated to a religious purpose, and it has a special value. And also, if we are a product of the Creator, then we have a moral obligation to serve and obey God. And there would be an absolute moral standard, which means there are specific principles between what is right and what is wrong. Now, on the other hand, if we were evolved by chance, then human life has no greater significance than a plant or animal life. And this would affect our thinking process. It would change that compassion that we have for the elderly, the terminally ill, the handicapped, or even that unborn with abortion. Also, if we were evolved by chance, the moral values are all relative to each other. There's no clear-cut distinction between right and wrong. It's all just a matter of opinion. Now, Dr. William Praveen, a professor at Cornell University and evolutionist, actually stated that there are 5 conclusions that can be drawn if man was created as a result of chance. Number 1, there's no evidence for God. Number 2, there's no life after death. Number 3, there is no absolute foundation for right and wrong. Number 4, there is no meaning of life. And number 5, people really don't have free will. Now, I don't know about you, but all them conclusions is awful depressing, you know. Where's the hope for our future if you're looking at all 5 of those? Well, Sir Frederick Hoyle summed it up fairly accurately when he said, believing life could result from chance is like believing a tornado could sweep through a junkyard and the winds could accidentally assemble a fully functioning Boeing 747. That's a pretty interesting statement, ain't it, Brother Gary? So we've looked at our specific creation. Let's now look at the creation of the universe. Now, since the universe does exist, it must have come from something, right, Brother Jeff? Well, there's only 2 explanations for the origin of the universe. Either it was created or it happened by chance. And for the universe to have happened by chance, it has to have always existed. Think about that for a minute. Now, there are several scientific observations that contradict this. The law of biogenesis states that life creates or generates more life. But if the universe actually happened by chance, then so did mankind. And one of the most prevailing theories of our origin is Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Now, this is very complicated, and I'm no expert on this. So, John, don't hit me up after this class wanting to talk about evolution, because I don't know all of the theories of it. But this theory does state that all life is related and originated from a common ancestor. The birds and the bananas, the fishes and the flowers, all are related to each other. All new generations are born with different traits that have been inherited from the previous generation. And the specific traits that are superior for survival will be passed on to new generations. This means that given enough time, any organism can change and evolve to create a new species. So if a member of a species developed a functional advantage, say it grew wings and it learned to fly, then its offspring would inherit that advantage and it would pass on to their offspring. But Darwin's theory went beyond this. It states that millions and millions of years ago, this life began with single-cell creatures and then developed into what we see today as plant and animal life. Now, what's interesting about all this is that Darwin actually admitted that there was little evidence to support his theory. If transitions occurred between species, as his theory stated, then there should be significant fossils proving their existence. For example, there should be a fossil of a creature that was part ape and part human. Y'all ever seen one of them fossils anywhere? So Darwin, he stated that, hey, the lack of these fossils is perhaps the most obvious and serious objection to my theory. But he predicted that, hey, in the future, somebody's going to prove him correct. However, in 1979, David Raup of the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago said, "We are now about 120 years after Darwin, and the knowledge of fossils has greatly expanded. We now have 250,000 fossil species, but the situation hasn't changed much. We have even fewer examples of evolutionary transition than we had in Darwin's time. So let's see what the Bible says about creation. We're going to read the entire chapter of Genesis chapter 1. So if y'all would, please turn to Genesis chapter 1. And we're going to talk a little bit about each one of these verses as we get more into this. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called the seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God sent them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creatures that hath life, and fowl that it may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven." And God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Everything he created, he kept saying, "And God saw that it was good." And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the earth." And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth a living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and breast of the earth after his kind." And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and said unto them, "Be fruitful and multiply. Replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. So the Bible clearly tells us four main things about creation right here. Number one, God is the beginning. He created everything that exists out of nothing. Number two, God considered each thing he created to be good, meaning it was exactly as he had planned. Number three, God created man in his own image. We may have physical similarities to animals, but we're a whole lot more than an animal. And number four, God created plants and animals according to their kind. He kept saying kind, kind. So living things should be found in certain groups or kinds, and that one kind cannot change into another kind, as Darwin had suggested. And this is exactly the way it is today. Animals and plants exist in kind or in groups. So then the Bible further tells us, because of mankind's wickedness, God judged his creation with a worldwide flood. And if this is true, we would expect to find billions and billions of fossils buried in rock layers. And that's what we found. So do you actually think that God could have used evolution as a means of creating life? How many of y'all believe that? Well, there's several problems with this idea. Number one, if what we read is not true, should we believe the rest of the Bible? We can't we, Brother Steve? For example, the Hebrew word used for day in Genesis 1 is a word used for a 24-hour period. So clearly the author of Genesis meant that each day was a defined 24-hour period of time. He kept saying day and night, day and night. So and this is exactly the time frame that the world uses today, right? Now, in addition, the writing style used in this book of Genesis is that of a historical record. It's not a poem, or it's not about fictitious characters. And the issue of creation is mentioned throughout the Bible nearly 400 times. And to say that the events in Genesis is not actual events would also require believing that these other 400 references is also not true either. Number two, now according to what we just read, God created animals on day 5 and created man on day 6. So if millions of years occurred between these two events, then death, disease, and suffering were existing for millions of years before man. How could that be if God called his creation very good? And number three, if evolution is true, then death existed before mankind sinned. How could that be possible? Because the punishment for sin is death. So to sum up evolution, if scientific evidence points toward creation, then why do scientists still believe in evolution? Well, many believe in evolution because they don't want to believe in God. So we looked at the existence of God through creation. Now let's look at the existence of God through the design. Now, everybody knows the universe is an orderly, it's fashion, it's in order, okay? So it's reasonable to conclude that it was designed to be that way. For example, when we see a beautiful building, we realize that it exists because of a good architect and because of a good builder. Yet some scientists, they still argue that chance and time are sufficient to account for the obvious order of the universe. This argument originated back with Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, who all argued that the universe must have had an intelligent cause. But we see intelligent design every day. For example, if we found an arrowhead on a desert island, we assume that it was made by someone, even if we cannot see who the designer was. Now, John F.W. Herschel, he in the 19th century, he had the term analogical method. Now, this in short says if two phenomena are similar and the cause of one is known, then it stands to reason that the other one has the same cause. Let's look at DNA. You know, DNA is very important in determining who people are. And DNA is a 4-letter chemical alphabet that combines to form words, sentences, and paragraphs which spell out instructions to that particular cell. So when we look at these writings of the DNA, we can understand that it has an intelligent cause. Even Richard Dawkins has said that each cell in the human body contains more information than all 30 volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica. One cell. Another example is from a biochemist named Michael B. He used the term irreducible complexity, which is in reference to the minimum number of parts without which a machine will work. He used a mousetrap as an example. It would not work without a platform, a holding bar, a spring, a hammer, and a catch. All of them has to be in the right place for it to work. If you removed one part of that, it wouldn't work. And many structures in living organisms are a lot more complex than a mousetrap. Look at your vision when you look at things. It requires a dazzling array of chemicals in the right place at the right time, and then there's a complex system that's put into place to process that information for you to be able to see. Now, to take this one step further, there are a lot of inventions today that was inspired by the natural world. Lobster eyes are perfect square. NASA X-ray telescopes have copied this design. Swiss engineer George de Mestral got the idea for Velcro by observing the burrs that stuck in a dog's fur. Dragonflies can carry as much as 15 times their own weight as they fly. Yet most aircraft cannot lift much more than their own weight. And engineers have been studying dragonfly wings for years in an attempt to design better aircraft. Animals, they display a high level of engineering skill. A bird nest, perfect example. That extraordinary skill of masonry, weaving, and statics to build that little bird nest. Silkworms, they produce silk. which is a strong thread that we have used for centuries. What about the hypodermic needle? We use today, it was designed based on insect stingers for mosquitoes, wasps, and bees. Humans have only recently been able to accurately measure temperature, but many plants and animals have always been aware of temperature. You wonder how a dog can survive in the summer in the heat and how it can survive in the winter in the cold. It knows. The number of chirps the snowy tree cricket produces per minute corresponds to the air temperature. And this can be translated to a temperature with an accuracy of within a degree or two. So the more we learn about the universe, the more we understand the precision required for the existence of life. And many human inventions are only a poor copy of God's creations. And even these took the best human minds and years to develop. So to sum it all up on a clear night, about 6,000 stars are visible. And this is a reminder of what God tells us in Psalms chapter 19, verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. So I hope y'all got something out of this. I know we didn't have a lot of scriptures today. We just had that one chapter. But I'll be back in 3 weeks. Brother Steve will be back for the next 2. And we still got some interesting things to discuss here. Why am I here, Brother Ansel? And why does evil exist? That's some good topics. So I appreciate y'all's attention this morning.
That's a pretty good job, Professor Dodson.